The noise in the cafe had finally quieted to a low murmur. For Dinah, the shift felt endless. Every second seemed to drag, every clink of cutlery a reminder that she'd been on her feet for hours. She wiped down the last table by the window and checked her phone. Just one more hour. Rent was due in 2 days, and her phone bill was still unpaid. The tips had been awful, mostly small change left on the table by busy customers who never even glanced up from their phones. Dinah sighed, pulled her hair into a tighter ponytail, and grabbed the order pad. Her manager, an older woman with tired eyes, gave her a sympathetic look as if to say, "Hang in there." But Dinah was already running on autopilot. Sophia brought Panther some soup and carried it back to the table. Then the doorbell rang. The sound snapped her back to attention. A young man walked in, tall, lean, dressed casually in a plain shirt and slacks that made him look effortlessly put together. 2 men followed close behind, blending into the background but with sharp eyes that seemed to take in every detail. The cafe wasn't exactly known for attracting big names. It was the kind of place you'd never expect to see a celebrity, let alone someone with security. For a second, Dinah froze, her pen hovering over the pad, but she quickly pushed aside the surprise and walked to the table where the young man had seated himself. "Good afternoon," Dinah said, forcing a smile. "Can I get you something to start?" The young man looked up, and for a moment Dinah forgot what she was supposed to say. There was something familiar about his face. Striking, calm, but she couldn't place it. Then it hit her. Barron Trump. She had seen his face all over the news over the years, son of the former president. Her heart skipped a beat, but she reminded herself to stay calm. He was just a customer, nothing more. "I'll just have a cappuccino and maybe one of those croissants," Barron said quietly, his voice polite but distant. "Absolutely anything else?" Dana asked. He shook his head. "That'll be perfect, thank you." His words were simple, but his tone felt different. Maybe kind, or maybe just sincere. Dana wrote down the order and turned back toward the counter, trying to ignore the flutter in her chest. She wasn't sure if it was nerves or tiredness, but something about this moment felt important. As Dana made the coffee, she couldn't help but glance at his table again. Little did she know, this small interaction would soon change her whole day, and maybe her week. The cappuccino machine hissed as Dana frothed the milk. She focused on her movements, trying to steady herself and distract from the odd feeling twisting in her stomach. "Why am I acting like this?" she thought. "It's Barron Trump, of all people." She looked back at the table. He sat quietly, his posture relaxed but not stiff. Unlike most customers, he wasn't on his phone or working on a laptop. He just stared out the window, lost in thought. Occasionally, he took a sip of water from the glass she had given him earlier. By the time the cappuccino and croissant were ready, Dana had calmed down. She carefully balanced the tray and walked over to his table. "Here you go," she said softly, placing the cup and pastry in front of him. He arrived at Works in the morning. He looked up and smiled, a small but genuine smile. "Thank you." "You're welcome. Let me know if you need anything else," she replied, keeping her voice polite. As Dana turned to walk back to the counter, something made her pause. Maybe it was the feeling of his eyes still on her, curious but not intrusive. Or maybe it was just her own tiredness making her self-conscious. Either way, her heart fluttered again. Minutes passed, and Dana kept herself busy cleaning tables and refilling sugar containers. The cafe grew quiet again. Aside from the soft hum of background music, Dana felt the weight of the room in a way she hadn't before. It was as if something invisible was pressing on her, urging her to pay attention. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Barron pull a pen from his pocket and lean over the receipt as his meal came to an end. He wrote something quickly, almost as if he didn't want anyone to see, folded the paper neatly, and tucked it under the empty coffee cup. The smell of coffee. Then he stood, gathering his phone and coat. Dana watched him for a second, but quickly forced herself to focus. "Thank you for coming," she said softly as he walked by. Barron turned back, just slightly, and smiled. "Have a good day." Those words hung in the air longer than they should have. Dana stood frozen in the middle of the cafe, her eyes following him as he left with his security behind him. The bell above the door chimed once more, and then the room was quiet again. She let out a slow breath, picked up her tray, and moved to clear the table. The cappuccino cup was empty, with only a little foam clinging to the rim. The croissant plate had only crumbs left. Then she saw it. The receipt. We need someone to get serious for a minute. Dana picked it up carefully, feeling the weight of it in her hand. Her first thought was that it might be a generous tip, though that wasn't unusual with wealthy customers. They often left big tips to make up for their lack of interaction. But as she unfolded the receipt, her heart skipped a beat. At the bottom, beneath the total, was a number, a tip so large it made her stomach drop. 4 crisp digits. Above the number, a handwritten note read, "Your kindness and hard work don't go unnoticed. My family has been where you are. Stay strong. Brighter days are coming." Dana's hands began to tremble. She read the words again, this time slowly, as the reality of what she was holding sank in. Dana let the words sink in, her eyes darting to the door where Barron had disappeared. Hot tears started to pool in her eyes and her vision blurred. Her knees went weak and she stumbled back into the empty chair across from where he had sat. She just stared at the note, the tip. It wasn't about the money, it was the words, the weight of empathy written in ink by someone she never thought would even notice her. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, Dana felt seen. Tears streamed down her face as she thought about what the words meant. But the moment wasn't over yet. Someone else would see the note, and Dana's story was about to spread far beyond the walls of the cafe. The sound of the door opening snapped Dana out of her trance. She quickly wiped her tears with the back of her hand and tugged the note into her apron pocket as her manager walked over. "You okay?" her manager asked, narrowing her eyes with concern. "What happened?" Dana hesitated for a moment, trying to find the right words. I'm fine," she said, though her voice cracked a little. Just a really generous tip." Her manager raised an eyebrow, not convinced. "Generous enough to make you cry?" Dana nodded, managing a shaky laugh, then reached for the folded receipt. She held it out to her manager. When her manager saw the tip, she let out a low whistle. "Oh, no way. Who left this?" "Corner table," Dana said, her voice quieter now. "That was Barron Trump." "Dana." Her manager blinked. "The Barron Trump? Are you serious?" "Yeah," Dana said, pulling the note from her pocket, "but it's not just the money." She handed the note over carefully, like it might fall apart. Her manager read it, and for the first time in months, Dana saw a real softness in her boss's eyes. "Wow," she whispered, handing the note back. "That's something else." "It really is," Dana agreed, folding the note again, treating it like a treasure. "I don't even know why he wrote it. I didn't do anything special," Dana said quietly. Her manager looked at her for a long moment. "Sometimes people just know, Dana. They can see what you're going through, even when you think you're hiding it. You're here every day, working hard, always kind to the customers, even the ones who don't deserve it." Maybe he saw that. Dana swallowed hard. She hadn't realized how much she needed to hear those words. For months, she'd been barely keeping her head above water, working double shifts to pay rent, skipping meals to cover her mom's prescriptions. She'd stayed kind because it was the one thing she hadn't let the world take away. And somehow, Barron had seen that. As the minutes passed, a strange buzz filled the cafe. A couple of coworkers whispered by the pastry display, pointing toward the table where Barron had sat. Word spread quickly, and soon one of the baristas came up to Dana. "You served him, didn't you?" the girl asked, her voice a mix of excitement and disbelief. "What did he say? Was he nice?" Dana smiled faintly. "Yeah, he was a really nice guy." "I'd freak out," the barista laughed. "That's so crazy." Dana didn't say anything more. She didn't want to explain the note or the tip. It felt too personal, too sacred to share. For now, it was hers. The rest of her shift passed quickly. Every interaction felt lighter, every table cleared a little easier. When she finally took off her apron at the end of the day, the folded note stayed safely in her pocket. As Dana walked to the subway station, she found herself holding the receipt, again, staring at the words, "My family has been where you are. Stay strong. Brighter days are coming." She whispered the sentence softly, as though saying it out loud would make it real. He didn't have to write that, she thought. He didn't have to care. But he did. And as the train rumbled through the tunnels, Dana closed her eyes, letting herself believe. For the first time in a long time, Dana felt like maybe things could get better. But what she didn't know was that this quiet moment would soon become much bigger than she ever imagined. The note wouldn't stay a secret for long. The next morning, as the sun barely peeked through her apartment window, Dana's phone buzzed on the nightstand. She groaned, rolling over to check the screen. Dozens of notifications flooded her lock screen. "Why is everyone texting me?" she mumbled, squinting at the messages. "Girl, is this you? You're famous. Is this real?" Her thumb hovered over a message that included a link. It was a screenshot of the Daily Post headline. Barron Trump leaves Waitress a touching note and a huge tip. Internet reacts. Dana sat up straight, her heart pounding in her chest. She clicked the link. The article told the story, word for word. A struggling waitress, an unexpected guest, a note full of empathy, and a tip that seemed to have changed her life. The photo attached was of the note itself, her note, written in Barron's neat handwriting. Dana's hands shook as she scrawled. How did this happen? She opened another message from one of her co-workers. "The guy at table 5 yesterday. Someone must have seen the note and snapped a picture. It's everywhere now." Her heart dropped. Everywhere? She quickly checked her social media accounts, and sure enough, it was all there. On Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, the note had gone viral. Hundreds of comments flooded in. This is what the world needs more of. Barron Trump seems like such a kind soul. I don't care what anyone says. This is beautiful. Wait, what about the waitress? I hope she's okay. The more Dana read, the more overwhelmed she became. Strangers were debating her story, her life, without knowing a single thing about her. She dropped the phone onto her bed and buried her face in her hands. "What do I do now?" she whispered to herself. The sound of her mom's cough echoed from the next room, pulling Dana back to reality. She couldn't afford to lose her head over this, not with bills to pay and groceries to buy. Even as Dana grabbed her bag and rushed off to work, the knot in her stomach stayed. She wasn't ready for her story to be out in the world. The cafe felt different that day. As soon as Dana walked in, she could feel everyone's eyes on her. Her co-workers smiled at her in a way they never had before. Proud, almost. A few regulars looked up from their coffee cups, as if trying to figure out if she was the waitress from the article. Her manager greeted her with a big grin. "You're a local hero now," she teased. "I don't feel like one," Dana muttered. "You should," her manager replied, placing a hand on her shoulder. "What happened yesterday was special, Dana. Not everyone gets to be part of something like that." The words should have made her feel better, but instead, Dana just felt exposed. She wasn't special, just a waitress doing her job. And Barron Trump hadn't done it for attention. It had pissed him off. "He had the photos 2 weeks ago," Dana said. As she tied her apron and stepped onto the floor, Dana felt the weight of the world's eyes on her, even if they weren't physically there. The morning was spent dodging questions from customers and coworkers alike, forcing a smile when people mentioned "that nice young man" or asked about what he wrote to you. Things finally reached a boiling point at lunch. A news crew had parked outside the cafe. Cameras, microphones, the whole setup. "Seriously?" Dana groaned, watching the reporters talk to her manager. Her stomach twisted when one of the reporters caught her eye and waved. "You're the talk of the town," her co-worker teased. "Lucky me," Dana muttered under her breath. She ducked behind the counter and pulled out her phone, scrolling through the latest headlines. The comments were coming in faster than she could read. "That note probably saved your life. This is a lesson in kindness. Small gestures mean everything. There was a time in a life when you were unstoppable," he thought, but far from it now, since it was ruining him and his life forever. Amid the swirling chaos, Dana felt a small spark of hope. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about kindness. People were remembering that small acts could still make a big difference. But Dana still had one more decision to make, and it would decide how her story ended. By the time her shift ended, the cafe felt smaller than ever, suffocating under the weight of all the attention. She slipped out the back door, avoiding the news crew still gathered outside. As soon as her sneakers hit the pavement, she let out a long breath, as if shaking off the feeling of invisible eyes on her. The walk home was quiet. Too quiet. The streets felt different now. Like the world had shifted just slightly out of place. Dana clutched her bag tightly, the note still safely inside. Her phone buzzed again. "Dana, they want you on a TV morning show. Call me." It was her manager. Dana stopped, standing still on the sidewalk. The idea made her skin crawl. Go on TV and tell her story? No, that wasn't her. She didn't want her face on screens. But then again, wouldn't it be nice to explain? To tell the world it wasn't about money or fame, that kindness still mattered? Gurna. She stared at her phone for a long moment before shoving it back into her bag. Her answer could wait. When Dana got home, she found her mom sitting in her recliner, flipping through the TV channels. A familiar voice suddenly echoed from the screen. "A simple note left by Barron Trump for a hard-working waitress is melting hearts across the country." Dana froze in the doorway. On the screen was a blurred photo of the receipt, her note, and the headline, "A quiet act of generosity sparks national conversation." Her mom looked up, coughing softly. "That's you, isn't it?" Dana sighed and dropped her bag. "Yeah, Mom. That's me." Her mom's gaze softened as she motioned for Dana to sit beside her. "It's a good thing, you know. People need stories like this." "I didn't ask for it," Dana muttered, folding her arms. "Sometimes the good things find you when you're not looking for them," her mom replied gently, reaching out to squeeze Dana's hand. "What he wrote, that was special, and people are talking about it because they need to believe there's still kindness in the world. You're part of that now." Dana swallowed hard. "It just feels too big for me, Mom. Like I don't deserve it." Her mom shook her head slowly. "Don't say that. You work hard every day to keep us afloat. You're kind to people, even when you're tired. That's who you are, Dana. And someone saw it. Someone decided to remind you that you matter." Tears filled Dana's eyes again, but this time she didn't fight them. Her mom was right. The note wasn't just about her. It was about hope. It was about showing people that small gestures still had power, that kindness still mattered. That night, as Dana lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her phone buzzed again. She didn't need to check it to know what it was. More messages, more questions, more noise. But beneath all of that, the note sat tucked under her pillow, a reminder that someone unexpected had seen her. For once, Dana didn't feel invisible. The next day, Dana made a choice. She called her manager. "And tell the morning show I'll do it," she said quietly. Her manager nearly dropped the phone. "Are you sure?" "Yes, but I'm not going to talk about the money. I want to talk about the note. About kindness. That's all." Interview was simple. Dana sat on the couch, hands folded nervously in her lap as the host leaned forward. "Donna, you've been in the spotlight these past few days because of something very unexpected. A note and a tip from Barron Trump. Can you tell us how it felt when you first read it?" Dana paused, choosing her words carefully. "Honestly, it caught me off guard. It wasn't about the money. It was what he wrote. I've been going through a tough time, and those words meant more than I can explain," Dana said softly. The host nodded. The note said, "Your kindness and hard work don't go unnoticed. My family has been where you are. Stay strong. Brighter days are coming." What do you think he meant by that? Dana glanced at the camera, suddenly feeling like she was speaking to everyone watching, not just the host. "I think he meant that we all go through struggles, no matter who we are or what family we come from. And sometimes, when you're at your lowest, the smallest act of kindness can change everything. It reminds you that someone sees you and that you're not alone." The studio fell silent for a moment, the weight of her words hanging in the air. The host smiled warmly. "That's a beautiful message. Dana, is there anything you'd like to say to Barron, if he's watching?" Dana's voice wavered slightly, but she smiled. "Just thank you. Not for the money, but for seeing me, for reminding me to hold on to hope. You made more of a difference than you know." When the interview aired, Dana didn't check her phone. She didn't look at the comments or the headlines. Instead, she went back to work the next day, apron tied snugly, a little lighter on her feet. The cafe was busier than ever. Customers smiled at her differently now, not because they knew her story, but because she felt seen. People left kind notes on napkins, tipped a little extra, or simply said thank you with sincerity. Dana kept Barron's note tucked inside her wallet, where it would stay for years to come, a reminder that small gestures matter, that you never know how much hope a few words can bring. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change someone's life. Maybe it's a kind word, a helping hand, or just letting someone know they matter. Who can you lift up today? Remember, brighter days are coming for all of us. Sometimes we just need a reminder.